Hello there, and welcome to 2017 JAMB question and answer in the subject biology. My name is Anslem, and I'm going to be your instructor in this subject. Before we begin, I want to welcome you and ask that you hit the subscription button on our channel so that you get to know when we upload other videos either on this subject or any other subject that might interest you. You are welcome. Okay, so welcome to Biology 2017 JAMB question and answer. We'll take the first question. Number 1. The piercing and sucking mouth parts are found in A. grasshoppers, B. mosquitoes, C. cockroaches. In grasshoppers, we have the cutting and chewing, not piercing. And grasshoppers, they mostly feed on grasses, so it's to cut and chew. In mosquito, their mouth part is modified for piercing and sucking. Termites also modified for cutting and chewing. Cockroaches, the same. So the mouth part that is modified for piercing and sucking will be mosquitoes. So the correct answer is B. Number 2. The hormones that regulate plant growth are A. ethylene and auxins, B. auxins and gibberellins, C. cytokinins and abscisic acid, D. ethylene and gibberellins. So let us just quickly look at the different plant hormones and what they do. Actually, ethylene does not promote plant growth. Ethylene actually retards plant growth. Auxins promotes plant growth. Gibberellins promotes plant growth. Cytokinin are responsible for cell division in plants, while abscisic acid only encourages the growth of buds, but it also initiates dormancy in plants. So, looking from our definition, ethylene retards plant growth, auxin promotes plant growth, gibberellins promotes plant growth, cytokinins, they are only useful in maybe the cell division. They promote cell division, and abscisic acid, they promote growth in bud, and they also induce dormancy. The only pair there that promotes plant growth will be auxins and gibberellins. So the correct answer is B, auxins and gibberellins. Number 3. Which of the following pair of organisms exhibit parasitic association? Insect and plants, cattle and egrets, shark and remora, sassafly and cattle. In the case of insect and plants, it's a mutualistic kind of relationship, in that while the insect feed on the nectar of the plant, it helps the plant to disperse its pollen grain. In the case of the cattle and the egrets, the egrets feed on some parasitic ticks that exist in the body of the cattle, thereby helping the cattle remove those ticks. So in some way, the cattle provides food for the egrets, while the cattle help remove parasitic organisms that could cause harm. So it benefits both of them, and it's not parasitic. A parasitic relationship, by the way, is a relationship that benefits only one organism and causes harm to the other organism. Sharks and remora. Same with sharks and remora. The remora helps the shark to remove, waste around it. It helps it clean its mouth, while the shark helps the remora move around the water body, and it also helps, it helps the remora to move around the water body. So in some way, the shark benefits from the relationship and is not harmed. The remora also benefits from the relationship and is not harmed. In the case of sassafly and cattle, sassafly, feed on the blood of the cattle. So it feeds on the blood of the cattle. Beyond feeding on the blood of the cattle, it also injects a very deadly organism called trypanosoma into the blood of the cattle, thereby causing the cattle a lot of harm. So that is a type of parasitic relationship. So the correct answer to this would be D, sassafly and cattle. Number 4. Which of the following group of animals can withstand the rigor of an arid land? What is an arid land? An arid land is a desert environment. So you need to understand what an arid land is. A desert environment. A here say locust, camel, lizards, and snakes. B, monkeys, chameleon, earthworms, and grasshoppers. D, monkeys, grasshoppers, snails, and snakes. D, lungfish, duck, butterfly, and lizard. The correct answer here is A, locusts, camel, lizards, and snakes. Earthworm need a moist environment, so it definitely cannot survive in a desert environment. Snails also need wet environments to survive. Lungfish, even duck is a form of an aquatic bird. Feed on what, feed sometime in water, and so cannot survive in a desert environment. So the correct answer is A, locust, camel, lizard, and snakes. Number 5. Before we proceed to number 5, I want to remind you to hit the subscription button so that you know when we upload new videos. You will agree with me that the content on this channel can help you in preparing for your WAEC, NECO, and JAMB. So hit the subscription button so that you know when we upload new sets of videos. Thank you. Number 5. Suture joints are found in the dash. A, hip, B, ankle, C, skull, D, elbow. The first thing you need to understand, what is a suture joint? A suture joint is an immovable joint. It is a joint where two bones meet, but movement is not allowed in any direction. An example of such joints are found in your skull and in your pelvic. That's where you find suture joints. So we have skull, that will be it. C, where you have your pelvic girdle and your skull is where you have suture joints. Two bones meet, but they are not allowed movement in any direction. So the correct answer will be C. Number 6. The organelle responsible for osmoregulation in paramecium is what? Osmoregulation is actually the regulation of water in the organism called paramecium. And the organelle that is responsible for regulating water in paramecium is called the contractile vacuole. Contractile vacuole. The contractile vacuole is C. Flame cell. Flame cell is the respiratory organ in flatworms. Nephridia is the respiratory organ in earthworm. And the Malpighian tubule is the respiratory organ in insects. Contractile vacuole for paramecium. Number 7, use the diagram to answer the question that follows. So you have 4 diagrams there. One labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4. The first thing is to identify what each of those represents. Number 1 there represents a flame cell. Number 2 there represents the medulla, the kidney, sorry. Number 2 there is the kidney. Number 3 is the nephridium. And number 4 is the Malpighian tubule. So number 1 is the flame cell. Number 2 is the kidney. Number 3 is nephridium. And number 4 is Malpighian tubule. So the first question here says, the excretory organ of an earthworm is represented by what? The excretory organ of an earthworm is represented by what? It's represented by the... So number 3 was nephridium, and that is the excretory organ of earthworm. So the correct answer is C, nephridia or nephridium. Nephridia is plural, nephridium is singular. The platelets in mammalian blood are responsible for the primary function of the platelets is hemostasis and thrombosis, and it's also responsible for the healing of wound in mammals. The healing of wound, that is blood clotting of wound. So let's look at the options. Number 1, it transports oxygen. The platelets does not transport oxygen. Initiating clotting, removing carbon dioxide, destroying microorganisms. The function of the platelet is that it's initiating clotting. So the correct answer is B, initiating clotting. It initiates clotting. That is the healing of wound. Question 9. The most important factor that determines the different types of vegetation is A, light, B, wind, C, temperature, D, rainfall. While light, wind, and temperature are very important factors, however, the most important factor that determines the different types of vegetation is rainfall. Rainfall is the most important factor that determines. So usually vegetations are, the ecological vegetations are divided based on the amount of rainfall that you have in that particular ecology. So the most important factor that determines the different types of vegetation is rainfall. So high rainfall equals high vegetation, and low rainfall equals low vegetation. Question number 10. When testing for the presence of starch in a leaf, the reason for dipping the decolorized leaf in a hot water is to what? A, to detect the starch. B, to kill the leaf. C, to soften the leaf. D, to remove the chlorophyll. There are 4 stages in testing for starch in a leaf. The first stage is that you boil the leaf. The second stage is that you dip the leaf, the boiled leaf, in an alcohol solution to decolorize the leaf. The third stage is that you dip the colorized leaf in hot water to soften the leaf. And then the fourth stage is that you apply iodine to the softened leaf. So the reason for dipping the decolorized leaf inside hot water is to soften the leaf. So your correct answer is C, soften the leaf. At this point, I want to remind you to hit the subscription button if you haven't already, and so you can know when we upload the next video. And I also want you to talk to your colleagues about this channel and let them benefit from it. Thank you very much. Question number 11. The relationship between remora and shark can best be described as A. Parasitism, B. Amensalism, C. Mutualism, and D. Commensalism. Well, parasitism is a relationship where one of the relating partner or relating organism benefits and the other is harmed. Mutualism is one in which both of them, they benefit from the relationship in some way. Commensalism is a relationship where one benefits and the other is not harmed in any way. So one benefits from the relationship, but the other is not necessarily harmed. The relationship between remora and shark, both of them benefit. Why? Because the shark helps the remora to move around the waters and also provide food particles for the remora to feed on, while the remora helps the shark to clean out its environment and its mouth area. So the relationship between a shark and a remora will be mutualism. So the correct answer is C. Question number 12. The major characteristics of freshwater habitat is the possession of what? Now, what's a freshwater habitat? A freshwater habitat is a form of water that is mainly from inland water, and it is characterized by low salinity. When we talk about salinity, we're talking about the amount of salt that is in the water. So freshwater is characterized by low salinity or low amount of dissolved salt. So let's look at the options. A, high turbidity. B, high density. C, low salinity. D, high current. So what characterizes freshwater is that it is low in salinity. Low salinity. So the correct option is C. Question 13. The causative organism of cholera is Clostridium species, Shigella species, Vibrio species, Salmonella typhi. The causative organism of cholera is a bacteria called Bacterium Vibrio cholerae, and that is Vibrio species. And it is an infection that happens in the intestine of mammals. So the causative organism of cholera is Vibrio species. The correct answer there will be C, Vibrio species. Question number 14. The process that takes place in the dark stage of photosynthesis is what? A, oxidation of water. B, photolysis of water. C, oxidation of carbon 4 oxide. D, reduction of carbon 4 oxide. During the dark stage of photosynthesis, what actually happens is that NADPH and ATP, which are formed in the light stage of photosynthesis, react with carbon 4 oxide to give carbohydrates, to form carbohydrates. In the process, carbon 4 oxide is reduced during the dark stages of photosynthesis. So that's what happens during the dark stage of photosynthesis. And with that, we know that carbon 4 oxide is reduced. So the reduction of carbon 4 oxide is what happens during the process of the dark stage of photosynthesis. So the correct answer there will be D, the reduction of carbon 4 oxide. Question number 15. Chlorofluorocarbon are an air pollutant that originate from A, crude oil refining, B, coal mining, C, motor vehicle exhaust, D, cooling systems. Chlorofluorocarbon, the major source of chlorofluorocarbon is from refrigerants, from our cooling system and from aerosols from aircrafts. So if we go by that, refrigerants from cooling system and aerosol from aircraft, the correct answer will be cooling system. Chlorofluorocarbon, the major source of chlorofluorocarbon is cooling system, like your ACs, your refrigerators, your deep freezers, are a major source of chlorofluorocarbon. So the correct answer will be D, cooling system. Question 16. Which of the following is organ level of organization? Which of the following is organ level of organization? A, Volvox species. B, Paramecium. D, Hydra viridis. And D, onion bulb. A, Volvox. Volvox is multicellular, but it is only multicellular at the tissue level, not at the organ level. Paramecium is unicellular. It's a single cell organism. Hydra is also multicellular, but also at the tissue level. It is not as evolved to the organ level. The only option here is onion bulb, because the onion bulb have different layers of tissues of onion. So that will be at the organ level of organization. So the correct option here would be D, onion bulb. Question 17. The simplest form of reproduction is A, conjugation. B, budding. C, spore formation. And D, binary fission. Now, in conjugation, what happens in conjugation is that it happens in is a form of sexual reproduction in simple organisms, where there is an exchange. It's an exchange between the cellular material from one organism to the other, and from the other to the other organism. That is a sexual reproduction in simple organism. Budding is a form of reproduction where new organisms just, it's a form of vegetative reproduction where new organisms just grow out of a part of an existing organism. Spore formation is a reproduction mostly found in organisms like Spirogyra, where they produce spores, and under suitable condition, these spores can develop into full organism. Binary fission is also occurs in simple organisms like amoeba, where an existing organism just simply divides into two new organisms. And that is actually the simplest form of reproduction in organisms. So the simplest form of reproduction is binary fission, which is simply the division of an existing organism into two. So the correct answer there would be D. Question number 18. Which of the following is a characteristic of wind-pollinated flower? Number A says flowers lack nectar. Flowers are conspicuous, that's B. C, flowers have petals. D, flowers are bisexuals. One of the characteristics of wind-pollinated flowers is that they don't have nectars. Possession of nectar is the characteristic of insect-pollinated flowers. So the correct option here is A, flowers. Question number 20. The process required for formation of gametes in sexual reproduction is A, implantation. B, fertilization. C, mitosis. And D, meiosis. Formation of gametes means formation of sexual, the sexual cells that are required in sexual reproduction, like your sperm cells in the male and the ovary in the female. And we know that implantation is when fertilization has already taken place, when the zygote is formed. That is the process of implanting the zygote to the walls of the fallopian tube. Fertilization is actually the process where the male where the male cell and the female cell fuses together to form a zygote. Mitosis is cell division, but not in sexual cells. Meiosis is the cell division that is required for the formation of gamete cells in sexual reproduction. So the correct answer there would be meiosis, which is D. With this, we've come to the end of this first set of answers for the 2017 biology JAMB question. I want to ask that before you leave, that you hit the subscription button so that you know when we upload the remaining part of this video and other videos in other subjects that we cover. We cover maths, physics, chemistry, government, economics, so you know when they will come up and you get notified. Thank you and see you next time.